Alo, 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 có tiếng rồi này.
That we go Ilaria join, Fabricio join.
Okay, I
So
just
we are, you exactly at one. You should be there.
yeah, yeah.
Don't delay. It's only 4 minutes. I will be standing there, right there, and they will go live.
Yes, stand over there. So please in speaker right here. Okay. Please turn it on. Yeah. Mic phục
Yes. Okay. Distinguished guests,
Thưa các quý vị đại biểu,
requesting you to be seated.
vâng, xin mời các quý vị có thể ổn định chỗ ngồi. Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu diễn đàn trong vài phút nữa. Xin cảm ơn ạ.
Yes, we can to start the live streaming. We come to the room. There's only one graphic out there.
So live streaming has not come as of now. We will just start exactly at one. So live streaming may start exactly. Live streaming should go that what is there in the presentation mode.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
On live streaming, whatever is coming on the live streaming, presentation should come. The speaking should come in live streaming. Live streaming presentation would come, no? Live streaming. Yeah, so that's it. Okay. It's one, you have to go live quickly. This one. One.
Distinguished guests,
Kính thưa,
good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are joining us from. Welcome to the ATMI-ASEAN Second High-Level Policy Forum.
Are joining
transforming food system in the ASEAN region post-COVID-19, responding to food security and inclusiveness concern. To begin with this forum, may I kindly request Dr. Shahidur Rashid and then Dr. Trang Chong Tang, Ms. Ilaria Firmian, Dr. Glenn Gregorio to the stage. Thank you. My name is Anik Fadila. I'm your Master of Ceremony in this 2 days forum. This forum is a summit forum of the ATMI-ASEAN project. We will showcase and disseminate the project outcome. Due to the pandemic, this forum will be organized that we not only can have a project reunion today in Hanoi in these 2 days, but we also able to invite other colleagues who are unable to join us in person today and in this 2 days forum. So we will have other participants in Zoom. And not only that, please be informed that this forum is broadcasted live streaming on IFPRI-South Asia YouTube channel, live tweets on @IFPRI-SAO, and we invite everyone to join to post on your social media handle with hashtag ATMI-ASEAN and hashtag HLPF 2022. We also would like to invite Dr. Davish Roy and Dr. Fabricio to the stage. Thank you. Now to begin, may I kindly invite Dr. Shahidur Rashid to deliver his welcoming remarks. Dr. Shahidur Rashid is IFPRI-South Asia Region Director. Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anik. A very good afternoon to everyone sitting here in Hanoi. Good morning to colleagues in Rome. And a very early morning to colleagues joining us from Washington. I see my colleague, Hiroki Takashima, has already joined. That must be wee hours of the day. So thank you so much, Hiro, and other colleagues joining us today from Washington. I don't have any PowerPoint slides because I don't have any big points to make, but I would like to share some thoughts. At the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Tang, IFSAD, and colleagues from IFSAD for hosting this event in Hanoi. Thank you for your hospitality, for your support in organizing this event. It has been my first trip to Hanoi, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So what I'd like to do today is to share 3 things. I think today this event calls for 3 things. 1 is celebrate, number 2, appreciate, and number 3 is contemplate. Let me try to elaborate. Why celebrate? I think everyone in this room, as well as online, would agree with me that we all have reasons for celebration, not for the project alone, but for the very fact that we could get together in person today and exchange our ideas and talk about the important issue of building food system after COVID. Only 3 months ago, we did not consider doing an in-person meeting. So this is a real blessing. It's fantastic to interact with the colleagues, see the person, collaborators, colleagues, professionals, whom we have been interacting on the screen for more than 2.5 years. So that indeed is a reason for celebration. Now coming to ATMI-ASEAN, which stands for Agricultural Transformation and Market Integration in ASEAN countries, I think we have many reasons to be thankful of and many reasons to celebrate. I will give a presentation tomorrow highlighting the accomplishments and successes of this project, what the colleagues, partners, and the collaborators have accomplished under this program. I was not the director for South Asia when this project started. And the IFAT lead, Dr. Karim Sema, was not the lead. And Dr. Pad, who is now the lead from CIRCA, was not the lead. It was started by our predecessor, but they have done a remarkable job in terms of generating evidence, fostering partnership, as well as doing outreach with the policymakers. This is a fantastic start from that point of view. So the celebration, real celebration, I hope my colleagues from IFPRI, CIRCA, and IFSAT will be hosting later. That will be a real celebration. And I would like to see you all there. My second point is appreciation. Why appreciation? I think we have to appreciate the partnership we have seen under this program. Let me speak from the point of view of IFPRI. In ASEAN region, IFPRI has had deeper engagement only in Vietnam in the mid-90s and in Myanmar in recent years. And I cannot think of any multi-country engagement since I've been with IFPRI for almost 25 years. So in that, what I have seen is the partnership, a strong partnership with the national institutions across 4 focus countries. And that, from that point of view, the conceptualization of it was really remarkable. From the IFAD side, I see that Dr. Fabrizio Bresciani has joined us from Rome. Hi, Fabrizio. Thank you for joining us today. He was in the as part of the conceptualization. So was my colleague, Dr. P.K. Joshi, former director for South Asia at IFPRI based in New Delhi. So I express my sincere gratitude to all of them to start the project on a strong founding. Then let's think about contemplation. Why do we need to contemplate about what we have done? Think about it. All the celebrations and all the appreciations that we have done cannot be stopped at the end of the project cycle. Project is going to end in December. But I think, and I'm convinced, that we have generated enough evidence and established a strong partnership, engaged with the policymakers, the stakeholders, private sectors, that calls for continued engagement. And we all need to think about how we do that best. We need to start going back to the beginning. Why did you do this project? Why ASEAN? From an international development perspective, I can give many reasons. Let me reflect a couple of them. One of them is ASEAN is a very dynamic region. If you talk about transformation, if you talk about market integration, this is a region that has its own challenges, but at the same time, this is the region that can present evidence, example, and lesson for the rest of the world. There are miracles here. Miracles happen in the country we are in right now. I spent time in Africa, and actually in a country called Ethiopia, which is the birthplace of coffee. They always used to say, Vietnam came out of nowhere and has become a major player in coffee market. These are impressive success stories. But this project has generated quite a bit of evidence going beyond. I'll give just one example for all of us to share. So my colleague, Devesh Roy, who is sitting in the podium, with other colleagues, have done a study on Vietnam, understanding the trade potential for agricultural commodities. Despite being successful, even in Vietnam, what they have found is that Vietnam undertrades in certain commodities, undertrades in terms of aggregate potential, undertrade in terms of partners. That raises the question, fundamental policy question. The question is, what are the reasons why Vietnam is undertrading in certain commodities? We can ask the same question for other countries. Why is that the case? that takes us to the policy point. What can we do to understand the determinants of this undertrade so that policy actions can be taken to take it forward? I would like to thank IFPRI colleagues for their generous support, and also to think about setting a partnership network. We are calling it NEPA, Network for Policy Analysts and Advisors. I hope that continues so that all the work we have done will have a life of their own, and there'll be continuity and sustainability. To that end, I look forward to your support and cooperation in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shahidur Rashid, Director of IFPRI-South Asia. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Trang Chong Tang, our project partners in Vietnam, Director General Institute of Policy and Strategy for Agriculture and Rural Development, IFPRI-South. Please.
Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, trước hết tôi xin cảm ơn những cái lời rất là tốt đẹp và
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to echo what Dr. Rashid has said.
Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, dự án
ladies and gentlemen, the ATMI-ASEAN project is funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFPRI, the Center for Research and Training in Agriculture in Southeast Asia. SARCA aims to strengthen the institutional capacity of ASEAN member countries to promote the integration of smallholders into the market, especially to enhance the study of related policies. This is an important and meaningful project in the context that agricultural sector of countries is transforming and integrating. As Dr. Pasi has mentioned, this is one of the projects that fall into a very important period of time, especially for different countries when the integration is expanding. That's the reason why we are, as a unit, participating. The IFPRI-South, as a partner, we can participate in this project in many different activities, especially training, capacity building, and the research activities in terms of the basic issues and how to ensure that the smallholder farmer to gain more benefits and to study the policy issue. This is a good opportunity for us to participate in this project. Ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of this project, IFPRI-South is very honored and thankful to the partners, IFPRI, SARCA, and IFPRI for creating us a favorable condition to participate in the workshop transforming the food system in the ASEAN post-COVID-19, responding to food security and inclusiveness. This forum will be the place to share experiences among countries on the topic of market integration, agricultural transformation, and a response to COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, Vietnam is one of the countries with natural conditions in which the agriculture sector play a very important role. We also have good conditions to develop agriculture. Over the past year, agriculture play a very important role for Vietnam, especially in crisis time. Agricultural sector is a foundation for the whole economy. At the moment, Vietnam agriculture has had a lot of progress in comparison with the previous period. The agricultural transformation has been more stable. The agricultural product have higher quality, and the quality of export has increased. In the year of 2021, the export turnover reached 48 billion US dollar. This is a great advantage of Vietnam. However, besides these successes, Vietnam agriculture still have shortcomings. The growth rate over the past time hasn't been very stable. The agricultural products quality is not equivalent to the potential. Many agricultural product quality hasn't met the international standards. Besides, the rural area of Vietnam have had a lot of progress. However, the income of rural people is still low, especially in the volatile time. And our Minister of Agriculture says that we are in the VUCA world, volatility world, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So all of these affect the development of Vietnam agricultural sector, not only Vietnam, but other countries in the coming time. Besides, there are new opportunities that will affect the Vietnam agriculture in particular and the world agriculture in general. So I also to share with you that the Prime Minister of Vietnam have just approved the strategy for sustainable agriculture and rural area development to 2030. The strategy objective is to develop that agricultural sector which is more sustainable, greener, and cleaner. We try our best so that to ensure the food security of Vietnam, but also to provide the best product that meet the high quality, more environmentally friendly products, export them to the world. Another important thing is to put the role of the farmers, the role of the smallholder farmers in the center. And we will try our best to help the enterprises to take more active role to bring the benefits from the international trade. So these are the new points in the strategy for 2021-2030 with a vision to 2045 of Vietnam. And as you can see, with this orientation, Vietnam agriculture have had a lot of issues to be further studied. And I think that the projects, the network like this project is a good opportunity for us to share different experiences and lessons learned from Institute of Developed Country and IFPRI-South is hope that through this workshop and forum and the project, we will learn a lot from experiences in terms of policy, in terms of technology, in terms of new models towards a sustainable, more inclusive agricultural sector. Ladies and gentlemen, before ending my speech, I'd like to express our sincere thanks to IFPRI for funding this project. I'd like to thank IFPRI, Circa, together with our partners for joining hands with IFPRI-South so that we can implement the project over the past time. I also believe that the our institute have learned a lot of lessons. We have acquired new skill and we are more confident in conducting the research on our own. We also hope that these experiences will help to contribute to the inclusive economy for the common prosperity in the region and in the world. Finally, I would like to wish our forum a great success. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you will have a nice day in Vietnam besides attending this forum. I hope that you have time to find more about Hanoi, about Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Trang. To introduce a little bit about IFPRI-South. IFPRI-South is a major think tank of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development of Vietnam in the field of policy and strategy of the agricultural sector. Now, I would like to invite Ilaria Firmian from Rome. Are you all here, Ilaria?
Yes, I am, and I can see the room. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm there and I've been following so far.
Okay, moment.
So, so good afternoon.
Hello, Ilaria. Yeah. Thank you.
Please. Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good, good. Well, so good afternoon and good morning to all colleagues. It's nice to see some of you I met many times on Zoom. And yeah, I feel a bit frustrated not to be there with you, but it's really a pleasure to see you all. And on behalf of IFAD and also the lead regional economist, Mr. Abdelkarim Zma, who will be there with you in Hanoi in person tomorrow, I'm really glad to welcome all the participants in this high-level policy forum. So this is the second and the last high-level policy forum of the Grant Agricultural Transformation and Market Integration in the ASEAN region, responding to food security and inclusiveness concerns. Like other project activities, the forum has been postponed due to travel restriction and social distancing measures, but we are really, as IFAD, we are really glad that finally the forum can be held in a hybrid mode and with many in-person participants. So ATMI has been a long project, which I joined only halfway through, and that was basically when the COVID started. So you will hear much more from Fabrizio on how the program started, while I would like to highlight on my side that this program is very important for IFAD, especially in its approach to policy engagement, which is one of our priority, and in strengthening the institution in support of agricultural development. So the COVID-19 pandemic has, of course, affected the implementation of this program. However, we think it has also provided a window of opportunity to innovate on the grant's scope of work and repurpose its activities towards supporting recovery efforts by ASEAN member states, and in particular, of course, those included in ATMI, through timely policy advice and technical assistance. The COVID-19, in a sense, has also provided an opportunity to expand on strategic partnerships, for example, with Croatia and with the Asian Farmers Association around the roundtable discussions on the weaknesses in the regional food systems that COVID-19 had revealed. These discussions and the conclusion drawn from the working groups established fed into the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which now guides a coordinated response for a much longer term recovery. So with the ATMI-ASEAN project moving towards closure, all us implementing partner raised question about its sustainability beyond the actual implementation and project life cycle. And we see the constitution of the network of policy advisors and analysts in the ASEAN region, or NEPA as we call it, as the way forward, because it really lays the ground for more interaction and more joint work in the years to come. So IFAD sees NEPA as a great opportunity. Of course, because on one side, it ensures that the significant work and the knowledge produced during the implementation of the ATMI project will be disseminated beyond the stakeholders involved in the project and will be sustained over the long run. But even more than that, the network will serve to link experts, sectors, emerging policy. And in IFAD, we really hope that it will provide the country-level support for policy engagement and will collaborate strictly with the IFAD loan programs on the ground for that purpose. IFAD needs partners and support for transforming the action of its project into material for policy engagement. And NEPA can really facilitate the alignment and the engagement of many relevant stakeholders, from government to civil society, to research and academia, to farmers association, and also to private sector. NEPA can also promote evidence-based dialogue on agriculture and its challenges and opportunities among members, with the objective of coming up with relevant pro-smallholders policy recommendations and scale up of successful experiences and approaches across the region. So we believe also that IFAD country directors and project teams should become part of NEPA, of the NEPA increased membership, so that NEPA can mobilize collective strengths to provide evidence-based policy options and recommendations on pro-poor smallholder agri-food systems. Especially, of course, we refer to the ASEAN Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, but also beyond that. Therefore, to conclude, I would like to say that I do not think that our collaboration will end at the completion date of this grant, but that the strategic partnership that the grant has developed will continue to support IFAD's mandate in the region. And with that, I wish all of you, all of us, a great successful forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria. Really wish you were here. Yeah, for next, I would like to remind everyone to post everything about the event on the social media. And don't forget to use hashtag of ATMI-ASEAN, ATMI-ASEAN, and then hashtag HLPF 2022. And for next, I would like to invite Dr. Glenn Gregorio, Director of Southeast ASEAN Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, SIARCA. Please.
Thank you and good day to everyone. I'm really excited with this event. It's, I think, one of the very few that we started face-to-face. I used to talk just sitting, reading my notes. And now I'm excited to see people. I will be more motivated to speak from our heart if we could really see faces. So thank you, everyone, for having us. And I know this is an exciting moment to all. I have a notes here because usually if you are they say if you are a politician or you're an economist, you could speak without notes. But if you're a scientist, you could not speak if you have no notes or you have no PowerPoint. So I have no PowerPoint, so I have to take notes here. So that's the lesson, okay? But if you're a scientist, you could speak without a notes. You could be a scientist and a politician. Actually, I just came from my first trip straight from Europe. I went to Ireland. We have a conference there, consultation. It's a policy forum also with the AgriNatura. This is the Association of Universities in Europe towards agriculture development. So, and they are also talking about innovative solutions towards food system transformation. Then I went to Montpellier, France, and I went to CGIAR, Agropolis, and everyone is talking about transformation and food systems. Even as before I came here, we have a lot of meetings because I'm one of the 2021 UN Food System Champion in our network. We continue working. We are talking about food systems transformation. So everyone is working together. And I think the challenge now is how we could synchronize what we are doing. But it's nice that everyone is talking about these different modalities, different, we have to customize it because every country have a different system. So that's also very important. But the question now, how we will be working together, which like this forum will give us information, will challenge us and show what solutions we have in Southeast Asia, how we could transfer it even for Africa or even South Asia or Latin America, or how we could learn from them also, but not dictating what we have or what they have to us because everyone is unique. We have to put it in a cultural perspective. I'll go back to my notes. Okay, so Dr. Rashid, the director of South Asia, IFPRI. We have Dr. Tran here, the Director General of IFSARD. We have Dr. Roy here also. We have Dr. a while ago, we have Ms. Ilaria Permian, the Regional Economist of IFAD. Of course, I have our friend here, Dr. Fabricio. And of course, we have this is a unique opportunity because we have also farmers or NGO representatives So we need also these people to hear us from the ground, because they are the people working on the ground that which should be implementing what we want to show them. They will say, oh, these are not implementable. So we need their feedback on those policies or recommendations based on our research to be implemented in the ground. So representative from the various nationals and regionals and international organizations from the private and the public sectors in ASEAN, and all our ATMI-ASEAN project partners. I like really ATMI because, as Rashid mentioned, this is a project started long time ago and still very relevant now, especially now everyone is talking about agricultural transformation, market integration, innovative markets, network. So agricultural transformation and market integration is really very relevant. So we have to continue doing that. So I congratulate those who think, IPAD and IFPRI, who think about this project, because before people are talking about transformation, they are already thinking about this one. So, and all our partners who are here physically and who are here joining us online. And the good thing about the COVID-19, I always think for the positive side, where after COVID, or during the COVID-19, everyone, we could have more reach, because, or else only us will know what's happening here. But now everyone could get the link and we could record everything, and they could listen, and even on real time, they could listen to us. A pleasant day again to everyone. And we are grateful to be with you in this hybrid event as we come to the final stretch of ATMI-ASEAN project. The pandemic has really caused a lot of changes and delays in many of our activities, but we commend everyone's commitment to continue working as we take the role of being the frontliners in leading the agricultural transformation and market integration in ASEAN region and beyond. This high-level policy forum is an integral part of the project component as we showcase evidence-based policy insights, best practices, and roadmap recommendation to promote smallholders' inclusiveness and their bargaining position in the agriculture value chain. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the need for agricultural transformation as well as the market integration in order to achieve food security. Crises like we have now also shows the importance of developing roadmaps. We have to do a lot of planning, and we have time to do the planning also, to think and plan ahead, to imagine the worst scenario, the unimaginable scenario, and as we step up and step out. This is the best time to restructure the food system to strengthen the capacity of the ASEAN members states and to develop policies and programs to support the adjustment of the smallholder farm sectors to change the sub-regional agricultural and food markets. At this point, I am confident that we are in the right track in realizing the objectives of ATMI-ASEAN projects to foster a cooperative environment among the ASEAN member countries and to facilitate alignment and engagement of all relevant stakeholders from the government, from the civil society, research, academe, farmers association, and the private sector. So we have to have this academe, industry, government, NGO, farmers integration to make this food system transformation to happen. Shirka believes because a significant outcome actually of years of field and market research, data gathering and analysis, discussion with experts, and we are pleased to come together to formally launch this NEPA, a very nice name, Network of Policy Advisors and Analysts in ASEAN region, another network which is very important because Circa believes that strategic partnership would yield better, bigger, and smarter outcome as we accelerate transformation through agricultural innovation, which is the theme of Circa's 5-year plan, accelerating transformation through agricultural innovation, or we call it ATTAIN. Rest assured that SERCA will continue to support the ATMI-ASEAN project in the best of our capacities. It is our pleasure to be part really of this undertaking. And let me take this opportunity to extend the gratitude to the ATMI-ASEAN project led by IFPRI-IPAD and the ASEAN Secretariat, and my colleagues here at SERCA also, who has been hardworking towards the development of this one and to finally, especially to our research and thought leadership department led by Dr. Ped Orencio and his hardworking team. Thank you for this one. And I have also a takeaway, CCC with this one. We have to continue communication, to continue communicate. Then the second C is we have to continue to have a friendly competition among countries based on our productivity. At the same time, the third C is collaboration. So communicate, compete, and collaborate. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glenn. Now, if we heard Ilaria before, she was mentioning about people who's building this project from scratch. We actually invited also the former project leader, Dr. P.K. Joshi, and also from SERCA, the former Dr. Membesi, but unfortunately, they are not able to join us today. Now, we are very happy to have Dr. Davish and also Dr. Fabrizio Bresciani from IFAD, who would like to share with us how this project was started. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Davish to start. Thank you.
There is a PowerPoint. Okay, and I move like left, right from here. Okay, so I'm the first one doing a PowerPoint, so that's like the exception bit of it. And what I'm going to be talking about is, as Nick mentioned, that we have we are among the ones who are there in the project from the beginning, from the inception, which we had in Philippines with SERCA. And so that's why I would just, if you see this is my highest level of decoration on a PowerPoint, right, that I've achieved in my life, which is, you can see, this will make any MBA very proud, actually, to see this. So now how do I move this? And that's where this is. So the point is that, we just have to think about how did this whole idea of a project, when Shahid was mentioning it, about talking about the project, he said that, it was a transformative region, that what we are going to do here is going to have a lot of implication for a lot of sector. But there's something that's also hidden there is that the region itself has so much of possibilities of cross-learning. There's so much of heterogeneity within the ASEAN region. But I just the whole history of economic thought, right? So if you see this, the question is, what is development? And that seems like kind of an eternal question, right? But that has been, evolving over time. And not only that is evolving over time. What is also evolving over time is, in terms of history of economic thought, what is the role of agriculture in development? So that's why I said our understanding of the role of agriculture in development is also changing with the shifts in the change in understanding of development. And it has also varied, and that's where, we have a lot of very important practitioners here, but I think that is also very important that, what research has done in trying to understand this role of agriculture in development. And you'll begin to see that how the ATMI-ASEAN actually glance onto it and we go forward into looking at this issue. So the way it has happened historically is you got interventions that you want to do in agriculture for development at a time is basically that reflects the dominant understanding, the economic thought in development and the role of agriculture in development. Okay, so now it's some bit of humility is in order, and we are economists, not the most humble people in the world, to be honest. But at this forum, let's just let the humility be in order. But just to say that it's not only economists who are not humble; it's academicians general. We generally are not very humble people, right? So the idea is that on the issue of development and the role of agriculture in development, we have been wrong in the past, right? And we need to remain open to learning and questioning. And you begin to see that where we need to do something, and that's where conceptualization of a project like ATMI-ASEAN comes in, right? So the idea is that we should be sufficiently involved that we can represent the agriculture sector and the food system. By the way, the food system itself is a part of the evolution of understanding, that we are not talking about food systems, we're just talking about agriculture, and that itself is a big evolution in understanding. And so that will tell us, and because IFAD is our kind donor in this, so we just want to, with that understanding, what we're going to do in ATMI-ASEAN, we just tell you where should the development dollar be invested, right? And so that's the kind of thing that if you relate to the history of economic thought, role of development and role of agriculture in development, and that is what is going to. So here are these two Nobel laureates, right, in economics. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm an economist. I don't know many things outside of economics, so I'll just probably drag in. This is Arthur Lewis, and that's Theodore Schulz. Both are Nobel laureates, and for things about role of agriculture in development, right? So this is the classic, the Lewis model that all of us read in economics, which is about transformation, which is agriculture's role in development is trying to do everything that can support industry, because industry is the prime mover of growth and development in this world. And agriculture provides labor, it generates sufficient investable resources, and there can be migration from rural to urban areas. And you can begin to see, sitting here in Vietnam, how the world somewhere is here in some parts, right? And so agriculture role basically is largely passive, it's secondary, and you have the highbrow of industry as the main. So you want to industrialize, that's how you can grow and develop, right? Agriculture plays a role in providing, food, then it can provide labor, people can move, and you can see what is happening in a lot of parts in ASEAN countries. Little more, so this is in some ways a very pessimist thought about agriculture. Agriculture is like, I don't know, it's like the right word or not. It's a bridesmaid or a handmaiden or whatever, right? So of development. Then you come to the second part, which is the Schulz side, that this agriculture, if you bend on, agriculture can be a driver of growth and development if you get some things right, you get technology right. And his book, I mean, since we are from CGIR, I think his book was where he talked of these ideas about the role importance of technology that came, and since they are from Philippines, actually, it came 5 years after establishment of IFPRI, and I think 4 years after the establishment of CIMIC in Mexico. So this is where, the things were just getting up on the technology side. You think we are still very much talking on production, agriculture, that you can do this technology, you can create surplus and so on. So these are the, so if you, and it was like the poor farmers, they can be efficient if you do the right technology and so on. And then that would really, with technology skills and all, you can really go there. Now, so this is, I have only a couple of slides, but just to bring in how the ATMI-ASEAN project was conceptualize and what we were trying to do here and how it has progressed, how the economic thought has changed within the project, right? So look at 1970s and what we are going to argue that what happens and what is the context in which the ATMI-ASEAN evolved was basically, if you look at the history of development and role of agriculture in development, it's basically that when this project came in was basically what was happening in the 1980s and 90s, right? And if you look at those earlier works were in 70s and all, which we're talking about. So in 1970s, the green revolution that happened in India, but a lot of they're here also in Indonesia, Philippines, and then in Latin America, right? Now, we are in Vietnam. There was also this big transformation that was happening in China with the household responsibility system, 1978. And if you see that the context of ATMI-ASEAN, we are just, the way the economists or the look at this process of growth and development from the point of view of transformation, which is agriculture transformation and market integration. The transformation, there are two ways of doing this. One is the structural change, which is about labor moving away from agriculture, going to industry and so on, and resources getting reallocated across more productive sectors. So that's called the structural change challenge. And Vietnam is one of those leading them where we are right now. It was meeting those structural change challenges. But there's another way that this thing happen, which is more about what the macroeconomists look at is, which is the fundamentals challenge. That, if you improve your human capital, if you improve your infrastructure, if you improve your institutions, then you can grow and you can develop, right? And you can begin to see that these are the issues that were there in the 1980s. If you look at, you had a big yield growth in green revolution, which have in some in ASEAN countries itself. But somehow then, now we begin to see agriculture performance not being great. Because I come from India. India was always going at very standard pace, just 2.5% for years and years. So one of our former professors, they call it the Hindu rate of growth. It was because, from the time the Hindu civilization was there, is the same rate of growth. That is the way we are growing. And so now agriculture in a lot of contexts in India and in South Asia, there's like a Hindu rate of growth. So the same thing is happening in some parts of ASEAN countries as well. So that's one of the issues. That second, the 1980s, 90s was period of globalization and big growth in trade, right? So now you can begin to see that we are seeing the similarity of the current time period. When I said it is like 1980s and 1990s redux. In this, now, and again, you have read all this work from Piketty and so on about how much the issue of inequality is there in the world. So this is also the period like the 1980s and 1990s. Now, but it has shifted to growth as a foundation for equity, right? And the idea is that in this period, there were a lot of influential work that was done. Yeah. And those works related to trying to show, apart from the whole idea of the structural change challenge, the fundamental challenge, it was also the issue of that agriculture was kind of disprotected sector. A lot of phenomenal work was done that the incentives are not right in agriculture. So you had to get these incentives and the markets right in order to help agriculture be the engine of growth and development. So that was, and those were the periods in which we are facing the same kind of situation now. So this idea of that you could just transfer resources from agriculture and then there will be no adverse consequences, that line of thinking is no longer there, which was in the early 70s and so on. And there's a lot of things, there have been some reductions in trade in agriculture has happened. That is also related a lot to ASEAN integration, but also beyond ASEAN, but now some needs to be done. So that's the last bit of site. And then, so now if you look at 1990s, 2000 and beyond, where all this project comes in. These are up to 1990s, you had this low international food prices leading up to, and then 2008, the food price crisis came. Then all these changes were, and in the World Development Report that came in 2008, which actually emphasized after this, it coincided with also this line of thinking of that agriculture for development that you can do. And there was this whole resurgence of small farm versus large farm debate. How do they really link to markets and all? And which is, if you look at the ATMI-ASEAN project, it's in the title itself. It's their market, agriculture transformation and market integration, addressing the issues of food security and inclusiveness, which is about how do you get different components there. So here I will stop, and now we, when in the ATMI-ASEAN project, where there's how the thinking has now changed. And when we started, we said that, one of the evolution in thinking is that now we are thinking about food system. And the thing that when in ATMI-ASEAN, we came with that perspective that, we are looking at the context where agriculture is becoming increasingly like industry, like manufacturing. And that inherently is kind of a food system perspective. And, and that some way in everything depends on everything else perspective. So now you don't, with COVID, you think more of supply chains rather than supply, producing more. Those are the issues. There's a lot of transition to food system thinking. Now, during the 80s, 90s, there were, and then into up to 2015, you were thinking of Millennium Development Goals. Now you're thinking about Sustainable Development Goals because now there's more awareness and realization of climate change. And the last bit that is part of what we were looking at in ATMI-ASEAN is this whole change landscape of market integration, which is this about fragmentation of supply chains, this globalization of value chains, regionalization of value chains. That's how now countries don't trade. Who trade are basically firms. These are really small micro entities. And that is the way we take into, and there are this, as we are just talking here, this ASEAN region itself now is going to be part of RCEP. There is an ASEAN agreement. There's going to be a Quad where also countries are going to join. So which Jagdish Bhagwati calls the spaghetti bowl of market integration arrangements, right? So these are the things and in which we wanted to see what is going to be the potential. So I'll just stop here, and that is, this is what led us into this project about agriculture transformation and market integration in the ASEAN region. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Dr. Fabrizio Bresciani from Rome. Hello. You are
hello,
still
Anik. Hello.
Yeah,
Good
please.
morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this high-level policy forum, the second one. And it's a great joy to see actually, that gradually, we're going back to meetings in presence. I remember the last one we had with ATMI was just before the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. It was, I think, if I remember well, in Bangkok at the end of 2019. So some time has passed since then. But great to see that, at least in a hybrid format, but we're having opportunities to get together again. Of course, I like to be more on the physical rather than on the digital side, but anyways, it's still great to be able to connect from Rome. So first of all, I would really like to greet many of the colleagues and partners that are present today. and that have been accompanying this rather long grant, because if we take into consideration the initial planned duration of the grant of 5 years plus extension, so we're talking of a project that has been with us for about 6 years. So great joy to greet Dr. Rashid, even though Dr. Josh is not here with us today. Great, also send in my greetings. Dr. Glenn Gregorio, PED, with whom we had been working together from the very start. Devesh, which has right now made a splendid recap of the evolution of economic thought about agricultural development, which really was a background into the conceptualization of the ATMI grant. Dr. Tran, and all the rest of the partners that have been with us for all these years. So perhaps I would like to organize a little bit my intervention around the 3 points. So one was sort of the underlying concerns that motivated the ATMI grant from IFAD's perspective. Then the partners that were engaged in transforming ATMI into something that into a active project. And then I thought about whether in retrospective it was a wise choice to launch the ATMI. Sort of a rhetorical question, but I think it's still worth making it. And so in terms of the underlying concerns, just before the ATMI was conceptualized, the world was coming out of a number of crises. The 2008 and 2011 food price crisis were definitely still influencing much of the thought in Southeast Asia regarding what strategies to develop in terms of food security. At the same time, it was a world in which globalization was advancing very quickly, including in agricultural and food markets. And therefore, one could perceive a tension in the region between food security on one side and the opportunities offered by market integration. And from IFAD's perspective, the big question there was how is smallholder agriculture going to be engaged in this debate? At that time, the Asian Farmer Association and ASIADRA were actually engaging with the ASEAN in terms of creating a space where the perspective of the smallholder agriculture in terms of food security policies could actually be debated. And so that was an advocacy table that was being developed, created, shaped by that type of engagement. What we felt was that that space could be reinforced and complemented by a space where evidence and analysis could be developed around this fundamental concern about the future of smallholder agriculture and small, medium enterprises engaged in value chains, and bring that evidence and analysis to complement the discussions that were going on at a more advocacy level, right? And so this is basically was the gap that we felt existed and could be addressed through a grant. Discussion started very soon with IFPRI, and we had actually a first attempt to conceptualize the ATMI. I think it was around 2014. I had just joined IFAD at that time, It was interesting because at the moment the grant and Dr. Joshi was leading IFPRI's South Asia office. At that time, no, the thought was more in terms of looking at the market integration between ASEAN and South Asia, right? And so the debate that actually we had in turn inside the IFAD at that time showed actually something that was quite surprising for me as I was entering to IFAD. It was IFAD feeling a little bit out of its comfort zone when discussing purely trade issues. So basically management sent us back to the drawing board, and we then went through a second conceptualization, which was finally approved in 2015, where we complemented that perspective of looking at the opportunities offered by market integration for Southeast Asia as a bloc with South Asia, with a more intra-Asian also perspective. So the idea was to look more, not more, but to complement the two, and to have a complementary approach, looking also at the trade and agricultural development opportunities within the ASEAN member states. And so that was the way in which basically the ATMI grant was born, and finally got under implementation in 2016. So I think that strategically speaking, the grant has definitely been able to address a clear gap that had been identified, and which, as we heard just now from the words of Dr. Devesh, is still very much of an issue, right? This tension between small agriculture, large agriculture, transformation of food systems, and all the questions that come in this connection for policymakers, right? What to do, how to manage these tensions. In terms of the choice of partners, I think this has been another plus of the ATMI grant. I mentioned the fact that from the very beginning, this has been this effort about joint conceptualization between IFPRI and IFAD on the grant. The choice of IFPRI, I think, has been really an important one. IFAD is a very much operational-oriented organization. It develops strategies to guide its interventions in country programs. It's an organization also that emphasizes a lot of the concept of partnerships, and we are quite one of the comparative advantages, let's say, of IFAD is its ability to work with farmer organizations at the apex national level, ground level, but also to develop and engage with policymakers in terms of agricultural development programs. What I think was really particularly important about this partnership with IFPRI was the fact that we could finally had an opportunity to bring a solid analysis and policy advice into the conceptualization of IFAD's engagement with governments and partners in Southeast Asia. And so this, I think, was a partnership that was very much appreciated by senior management from the very moment in which we started the conceptualizing the grant. And it was great, to also find on IFPRI side the willingness and the interest to engage in this grant, considering that that time, the bulk of the let's say, IFPRI did not have at that time an office in Southeast Asia, and so working with the South Asian program of IFPRI posed a little bit of challenges initially, but I think finally the grant offered an opportunity also for IFPRI to engage more deeply in the region. SIARCA was an organization that at the time in which the grant was being conceptualized, there had already been another couple of engagements previously and concurrently, actually, at the time in which the grant was being designed. And it was also an important partner for this grant. SIARCA had developed a series of policy roundtables in the ASEAN member states. And as I mentioned before, one of the objectives of the grant was to also more applied capacity building related work at national level. SIARCA offered all these type of engagements, and we felt that from the very start this was going to be a very important complement to the work that the grant was being had intended to support. Through SIARCA, we were able to identify and engage the national partners. The grant has been working throughout these years. And I mentioned before, the work that was being done at more advocacy, perhaps policy level with the ASEAN. This also opened spaces for partnering with the Asian Farmer Association and with Grow Asia on different aspects. So it was really, what was a grant that initially came out of a partnership between IFAD and IFPRI, then got immediately enriched, in terms of new various partners joining at different levels, regional, national, and so forth. So I think the one definitely positive aspect of the grant, one of its successes, in addition to all the other ones that are going to be discussed in these days, is actually the fact that it has been able to forge a partnership that I think is going to be long lasting. Was it a good choice? Well, I mentioned the fact that when we conceptualized the grant, we were looking at a world that was emerging from two important food price crises, and that the process of agricultural transformation was posing a lot of questions in terms of the viability of smallholder agriculture, how to make it actually, finding ways for integrating smallholders and small micro enterprises in these transforming food value chains. Now, we have gone recently through we've gone through a major shock, COVID-19. We all know what this has meant in terms of concerns regarding the stability of food markets in Southeast Asia. And I take also the opportunity again to mention how wisely governments in the region reacted to the challenges that were posed by the COVID-19 crisis. But then we had also the Food System Summit recently, which raises another set of issues with regard to food system transformation. And now we're living through a major crisis. We don't know how badly the Ukraine crisis will impact on international food markets. But all of this to say that the kind of concerns that we had back in 2014 and 15 are still very much alive today. Although, of course, we are looking at different challenges and different threats. But still, the big question remains about how countries will develop policies and strategies, and how smallholder agriculture will fit into that. And so this brings me to the last point, which is the fact that the network of policy advisors. I think this is a great creation of the grant. A challenge, of course, will be to find ways to make this network flourish and sustain through time. But I remember we had conversations just a year and a half ago about this development, and I think we have reasonable hopes to see this network grow and make roots in Southeast Asia. I think this network really is going to be key to help closing that sort of conceptual gap I referred to before. Policymakers in such difficult times as the ones we are living today need more than ever solid evidence-based policy advice, and so I think this network will really serve a very important function. So let me close here and wish you a very successful, fruitful work today and tomorrow. And again, I wish I could be there, but you are in good company. I know that Karim is going to be joining you either today or tomorrow morning. All the best. It has been a real pleasure and enjoy helping this grant come alive and work with all of you great partners in these years. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Fabrizio. If the ATMI project is trying to fill the gap of any knowledge in ASEAN countries, the stories that we just heard now from Dr. Devesh and Dr. Fabrizio, filling the gap of knowledge of what and how the ATMI project was building from scratch. A round of applause for all speakers. Thank you so much. Now, due to the time constraint, we have to move to session 1, agricultural transformation. We will have a group photo before the break, tea break. Yes, you may. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Paul Joseph Ramirez to lead the session 1, agricultural transformation. Please.
All right, can you hear me? Is my audio okay, or should I remove? I'll just remove it. All right, good day to everyone. I have the honor and privilege to be the moderator for the first panel session for this high-level policy forum. And I'm also happy to say that in this session, we have 3 distinguished speakers or panelists that will actually share their experiences and their work in the field of agricultural transformation in the ASEAN and also among different ASEAN member states. So before we proceed with the formal presentation, let me just check the members of our panel for this session. We have 2 members that are actually joining us virtually. So let me request the technical team to please pin or highlight. We have Dr. Hiroyuki Takeshima. She's our first panelist, so that everyone can actually see him easily. Joining us virtually as well is Dr. Sima Bathla. So can you also pin her in the Zoom session? And we are lucky to have here live in Vietnam our second panelist. And let me invite Dr. Zo U to join me here in stage so we can start the formal presentation for this particular session. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so let me give you a very brief introduction of our speakers and panelists before we give them a 10-minute before they provide their 10-minute presentation. So we will be starting with Dr. Hiroyuki Takeshima. So he will be sharing with us his work on agri-food system modernization and smallholders in Southeast Asia, and he will be providing some regional and micro perspectives. So Dr. Hiroyuki Takeshima is actually a senior research fellow of IFPRI. He obtained his PhD in agriculture and consumer economics from University of Illinois in the USA. He also has authored 30 peer-reviewed journal articles as well as edited books and numerous book chapters, focusing on various developing regions, including Africa, Central Asia, South Asia, as well as Southeast Asia, such as Vietnam and Myanmar. So Dr. Hiro also authors the chapter of the agricultural modernization in South Asia in the book Agricultural Development that is being edited by Keijiro Otsuka and Schengen Fan, the Director General of IFPRI. Dr. Hiroyuki is also the 2018 recipient of the Niels Westermack Award of the International Association of Agricultural Economists. His areas of interest include agricultural and rural transformation, public and private investment, agricultural technology adoption, economic geography, and finally, agriculture, nutrition linkages. So please help me welcome Dr. Takeshima Hiroyuki. Yeah, so Dr. Hiro, some of our colleagues from IFPRI and CIRCA will be sending you a chat message to help you with that 10-minute time that is provided to you for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me share my screen. I hope you can see my. Okay, I can. Yeah, I can see on the screen. Yeah. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, distinguished participants. Please accept my apology for not being able to join in person. I would have wanted to really join in person, but my personal circumstance did not allow me to do so. In my presentation, in my 10 minutes presentation, I'll be highlighting the key summary findings from the 2 studies that we conducted under this project, basically looking at some aspects of agricultural, agri-food system transformation in ASEAN region, both from regional and micro perspectives. So there have been growing narratives of agricultural modernization in ASEAN region and emerging sustainability issues. And there have been also interest in understanding these trends through various nationally representative figures. At the same time, one of the key challenges or unique feature in Asia is the persistence of smallholders despite the agri-food market growth in the region. So the objective of these 2 studies and today's presentation are to summarize a few key patterns of agriculture modernization and specifically focusing on the continued importance of domestic production, land and labor productivity growth trajectory, as well as emerging challenges, and also present some micro evidence focusing on Vietnam by looking at how smallholder households are evolving in the face of increased food market integration, and what are the potential economic mechanisms to make these smallholders diversify into farming and non-farm activities. So I will go through a few slides to show some of the key patterns at the regional level. One of the important patterns is that trade has been growing, but at the same time, the domestic production continued to play an important role in meeting the demand for food and nutrition in the region. So for most commodities, the share of a net import have expanded gradually, but remained within 10% of the total domestic consumption. Milk is one of the few exceptions that the ASEAN region rely heavily on import from outside. But this does not mean that the trade is not important. Rather, it shows that a trade and the domestic production growth go hand in hand, and increased productivity of domestic production is likely to be an important driver and a complement to the regional trade growth. Now, looking at the pattern of productivity growth, we have been seeing an important a sign of a structural transformation that is happening in the ASEAN region, which is that the trajectory of productivity growth has shifted from land productivity growth to labor productivity growth, meaning that the agricultural sector, its productivity is increasingly relying on increased capital intensity and skill and knowledge of agricultural workers. Now, some of the challenges that I would like to highlight is one of it is the region's agricultural sector has seen growing shift toward more protective agricultural policies. One way to look at this is the change in nominal rate of assistance. In the past, agricultural sector was more the source of taxation and tax revenue. And over time, this sector has become more of a recipient of support. And this is a common trend that we have seen around the world as the country develops and the agricultural sector become more mature. The sector becomes more the recipient of support. So being protected is not necessarily a bad thing, but one of the implications is that these protective policies are likely to put pressure, increased pressure on the public expenditure and public finance. So that is the sector will require sustainable financial support from the government, and that is likely to be one of the important challenges that the region will face. Another important unique feature and also a challenge is, despite this transformation, the average land holding size have remained small in the region, so that the smallholders continue to dominate. In Asia, Japan is one of the few exceptions that have seen significant growth in farm size in recent years, but the most other countries have remained persistently dominated by smallholders. And this is despite the growing mechanization that's happening in the region. Tractor and use of combine harvesters have spread considerably in the region in the last few decades. So, for example, one of the implications is that the land reform is becoming increasingly important to exploit the returns to scale. Now, there are also growing sustainability challenges. Southeast Asia is relatively rich in forest and water, but they are increasingly degraded. There are also other environmental challenges, including deforestation, salinization, and other natural resource degradation, and increased competition for water from other sectors. Now, I would like to quickly look at more of the micro perspectives using the case of Vietnam. One of the some of the important interesting aspects of changing patterns in Vietnam are include that first, the declining share of Vietnam households are growing food or selling food, which is not surprising. More and more households are moving out of food production activities and relying entirely on agri-food market. Now, among those who continue to grow food, they are becoming more commercialized. They are selling increased share of the produce food to the market. At the same time, smallholders are increasingly purchasing food from the market. And the farm households that are selling agricultural products are actually selling fewer number of commodities, meaning they're specializing. So there are a lot of different evolutions that is happening in the smallholders production activities. So one thing we wanted to do was to understand that some of the economic drivers that are driving this pattern, and especially we hypothesize that there are the increased integration in food market is driving the increased economies of diversification between non-farm activities and farming activities. So this is one thing we wanted to test empirically. I will not go into too much in these technical aspects, but we essentially used production function approach and applied it to Vietnam's household living standard surveys to estimate these patterns. And I'll just quickly summarize two key results. First key results were the integration into food market raises smallholders' economies of diversification between farming and non-farm activities. What this means is the more the smallholders become integrated in food market, it becomes more sense for them to engage in both farming and non-farm activities. It does not necessarily mean that integration helps them actually specialize just in non-farm activities, but it makes more sense for them to engage in both farming and non-farm activities. And this relates to why smallholders continue to remain in the agricultural sector. Another interesting finding was that the integration with food market also encouraged smallholder households' female members to participate in non-farm sector, and particularly in the northern part of Vietnam. So to conclude, at the regional level, we have seen a significant transformation that is happening in ASEAN region, and driven by increased labor productivity growth and shifting away from land productivity growth. But there are also some emergent challenges. At the micro level, integration into food market is more pronounced through food purchase, more so than food sales. For smallholders, the agri-food market that is growing is offering a cheaper and more diverse source of food. And this has been linked to increased female members' participation into non-farm labor market. But at the same time, smallholders remain in farming because the food market integration actually raise economies of diversification into farming and non-farm activities instead of specializing entirely in non-farm activities. But within the household level, at the individual level, there are some specializations happening. So, for example, some women specialize in non-farm activities, while some women specialize actually in farming activities. So, at the household level, there are diversification ongoing, but at the individual level, there are specialization. So it shows how the complex nexus of agri-food market and smallholder farmers. So, so these are key highlights from our studies. And let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hiro. That was a very interesting presentation. I like that you provided us some idea on the development in relation to food market integration. And you really showed that the impacts were not only on the productivity or production, but also into household roles, including the impacts on women of this initiative or development in Vietnam. Thank you very much. If you have questions for Dr. Hiro, we will reserve those for the open forum at the end of this particular session. For those participants virtually, you can please type in your questions in our chat box, and we will consolidate all of those questions for the open forum discussion also later. So thank you very much. Now, let me now introduce our second speaker and panelist for this session. So we have here Dr. Zo Wu, which is he's the executive director of the Center for Economic and Social Development, an independent think tank dedicated to inclusive development in Myanmar. He was economic advisor to the president of Myanmar from 2012 to 2016 and continued to serve in several interministerial committees and task forces as a technical advisor till 2020. He holds graduate degrees from Columbia University and American University in International Development, Finance and Banking, and Political Economy, as well as executive certificates from Harvard University and Turin University. He also taught at Chiang Mai University from 2006 to 2011. Dr. Zo will be presenting his study or paper on Myanmar's maize value chain under COVID-19 and will show us some pathways for market integration. So please give Dr. Zo both a live and virtual applause. Do you want to use it? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for your very kind introduction. It is really refreshing to see many of our old friends, especially from IFPRI-South and also CRCA and IFPRI, of course. And I must thank IFPRI and CRCA for inviting us to participate in this project from the very beginning. And after all these years of COVID-19, and we have been absent from many of the activities. And in fact, my country has also experienced a lot of challenging times besides COVID. And I really appreciate IFPRI and CRCA, and also, of course, IFPRI-South for keep inviting us. And we miss a number of events, but this time I was really trying to catch up because I saw many of your presentations very inspiring and also very like the one that we just heard. It's a lot of lessons to be learned from my country. And so my presentation also has to do with the maize value chain that I believe many of our colleagues from Cambodia and Laos are also presenting, because I think the maize is becoming a hot commodity in the region. And in our case, it is a bit of a transformation in our maize sector, because mainly it was a very one of the very rare export commodity that experienced such a booming time during the COVID, and even after the our change of political regime in the country. And still, in terms of market integration and transformation, we still have a lot of challenges remain in the value chain. So I also try to look at the value chain gaps, and I come up with the one interesting phenomena where, as you can see, it's also related to the very political economy aspect of my country, where the government is more or less preoccupied with the ongoing challenges, and it was the private sector that took up the role of the government and tried to organize the value chain. And then I found this a young industry association that is managing the maize value chain to be a very critical player. And I just wanted to tell you the story, and let's see whether this is relevant for your other regional situations. Of course, the agriculture in Myanmar is very much narrowly based. So that is a clear reason why we need to really transform from very much a rice-dominated economy. We do have a second major crop like pulses and natural rubber, and also a few other, the common staples. And maize is grown in a very small part of our country, but somehow maize seem to have picked up, the growth in the last several years. And so this is a rare story out of Myanmar that caught a lot of attention from our researchers. And of course, COVID-19 also affected badly on the agriculture sector in many ways. It's not just the supply chain disruptions, but also the government imposed the lockdown, and then also the restrictions also disrupted a lot of domestic trade. So in fact, in my country, many value chains have suffered quite a lot during the COVID-19, and then somehow the maize value chain was spared, mainly because it was grown in a very particular areas where the COVID infection was the smallest. And then also, but the one interesting thing was we have been exporting rice and pulses. And then, of course, during the COVID period, the pulses trade also pick up. And then I think in the afternoon session, one of my research assistants actually look into the pulses value chain with a lot of help from RAI and IFPRI team from New Delhi, and then we did a lot of analyses. And so during the COVID-19, pulses sector also pick up boosting trade. And then also maize is the second hottest commodity that you can see now even trying to surpass the rice export in the last year, because we used to be the rice exporter in the history. We were called the rice bowl of Asia, but of course since 70s, due to the non-market integration, our rice sector has suffered quite a lot. And it has been in the declining trend, and then in fact the maize actually going to surpass very soon. But in terms of market destination, we also found a very interesting phenomenon during the COVID-19. Maize, our two commodities with the highest potential for export growth is pulses and maize. But one distinguishing feature of these two crops, and then their export destinations are also very much concentrated in a single market. For instance, like in pulses, we rely very much on India market to export our pulses, whereas for maize, we rely very much on China to export our maize. I think it's about nearly 80% of our pulses went to India, whereas the 95% of maize went to China. So that was a very dependency situation where the price was very much affected when these two countries don't have either restrictions or don't have demand to import our crops. So what essentially changed during the COVID-19 was many of our ASEAN neighbors, especially Thailand and also Vietnam and Philippines, started to buy a lot of maize from us. And we had, you can see our export destination has changed a lot, becoming more and more increasing towards Thailand and also the two other ASEAN members. So I think I would rather skip a little bit about the value chain challenges because it was very similar to other smallholders value chains where we have a lot of challenges, both in terms of production, in terms of yield gaps, and also the low profits, also in terms of marketing gaps, where we still suffer a lot in terms of seasonal price volatility, and then also the farm grade prices are always suppressed by the traders and merchants. And we still have a high cost of transportation, and we don't necessarily have a very sizable feed industry to cushion whatever the fluctuations that we may experience in the international markets. So these are all from the production, post-harvest, the trading to marketing, we have all kinds of gaps. And my next story is the role of the industrial association called the Myanmar Corn Industrial Association, which is relatively a young industrial associations and try to manage these gaps. So these are a bit of some of the concepts and theories that you can find in the role of the industrial association. Then we have a literature on the network economy where the producer can network and group together so that they can bargain a bit from the market transactions. And then the value chain integration is also very important. Value chain governance is between the farmers, the traders, and the processors are also important. Then you also need to integrate with the regional or global markets. And so how these local value chains integrate with the global markets is also another important aspect. So all these aspects is something that industrial associations in many countries are handling, together with the government. And in our case, MCIA, which is a relatively young industrial association, and when the government is so preoccupied with the dominant crop like a rice and all other political economy situations, it was the private sector that really tried to manage these gaps, and then they were able to access to the market and they were able to boost the export growth. So these are some of the features that we found very critical in our case in terms of membership, where you have the members from farmers to the processors, and leadership, it's a young and enterprising, and then also rotational and more democratic. And then also in terms of advocacy, they are more public and participatory. And then also they have a strong social media presence. And then they also try to link up with the markets. And so many of these gaps, they are still trying to manage these, but unfortunately, they were able to fix a lot of these gaps in the private in the market. So this is where we are, looking forward to the future, where the MCIA, as an important private sector player, will try to help the smallholders as well as the traders and processors in all these aspects. And I will try to go to the last slide. I think my time is up. If I may, I think, as I think Hiroko just mentioned about the role of the government and the protective policies, my question is whether is there any role for facilitative and promotional activities of the government, whether that kind of policies might also work. And then also one of the biggest lessons that we got from the COVID-19 crisis is that regional value chains become more important, and then the global markets, and then whether this is another area where the IFPRI and SIAGA and many of us can work together. And then the last not the least, I think the learning and sharing is very important, and I really appreciate the opportunity to learn from all of you here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. O, for sharing with us some idea on what's happening in the country. And I would like to thank you again for highlighting in this particular case the value of having these industry associations as a possible measure to take advantage of opportunities in the value chain, specifically for maize. All right, so we now move on to our last presenter panelist, but let me introduce her first. So our third presenter will be Dr. Seema Bathla. She's a professor at the Center for Study and Regional Development in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Before joining JNU, she worked in the Institute of Economic Growth, the Energy Research Institute, and Delhi University. She obtained her master's in philosophy from Delhi School of Economics and PhD from JNU. She has published national and international journals and has a keen interest in agriculture and agro-processing issues, where she carried out several research studies and undertaken assignments for World Bank, IFPRI, UNCTAD, WWF India, and IFPRI-South. She was conferred the Jawaharlal Nehru Award for Outstanding Postgraduate Agricultural Research by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, New Delhi in 2018. She is also the recipient of the R.T. Doshi Award for Best Papers Published in Agricultural Economics Research Review in 2014, 2015, and 2020, and also the Dr. Sen Award for the Best Book Published in 2018. So she will be sharing with us a synthesis on the structural transformation of Southeast Asian country and the key drivers. So please help me welcome Dr. Seema Bathla.
Thank you so much. Is my screen visible to everyone? Okay, a very good afternoon to everyone. I would like to thank IFPRI for inviting me to present findings of my research in this important forum. This study was undertaken jointly with Dr. P.K. Joshi, former director IFPRI, and Alvin D'Souza. The preliminary findings were presented in a seminar organized in Cambodia during December 2018. We received useful suggestions, revised the paper, and brought it out as IFPRI discussion paper. The context of study is that the economic development of a country is closely associated with the patterns of structural transformation it experiences. I think this was explained in the opening session by Dr. Devesh. In brief, the main proponents of this process, namely Lewis, Clark, Chenery, Kuznets, maintain that almost all the economies pass through a similar growth pattern. In the initial phases of development, the resources are reallocated from agriculture to industry, while in the second phase, there's a reallocation from industry to the service sector. This transition through different stages depend upon a number of factors related to favorable policies, technologies, and use of resources. Thereafter, with high economic growth and agricultural productivity, the agriculture sector behaves like any other sector in the economy. Ample evidence exists to show how economies have experienced structural transformation. The miraculous growth spurt witnessed in many Asian economies, notably in South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and more recently in Vietnam and China, are examples that even though the share of agriculture in total income and its labor share goes down in the process, agriculture continues to play a significant role in bringing about convergence in the living standards across urban and rural population and alleviating poverty. The key message is stopping the process of structural transformation may not work. However, designing policies to allow the poor to cope with changes in the economy would bring about a reduction in poverty as well as income inequality. So this study was taken to examine the factors that have driven structural transformation in the Southeast Asia and the policies supporting the process. It sets the stage by evaluating the structural transformation in each country, quantifying the contribution of within and structural change to overall productivity growth, and estimating the turning points to gauge the prospects of income convergence across the Southeast Asian economies. The focus is on 8 selected countries: Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. Brunei and Singapore were excluded from the analysis due to their relatively lesser dependence on agriculture, both having a less than 1% share of GDP agriculture in total income. The time period taken was from 1991 to 2016. The required data was sourced from the World Bank, FAO, and UN Comtrade. We examined the analysis of selected performance indicators with respect to the structural transformation process. We find that their base varies across the countries. For example, countries with low per capita income, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, are growing at a faster pace compared to relatively high per capita income countries, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, etc. Second, a similar pattern is visible for agriculture value-added activities. Third, growth in land productivity has increased at a slower pace in most of the countries, while in other countries it has either decelerated or stagnated. Agriculture productivity is growing at a faster pace compared to non-agriculture productivity in most of the countries. Another notable aspect is that the ratio of labor productivity in agriculture has declined, except in Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia. It indicates that physical productivity growth has not led to a corresponding improvement in the standard of living of people working in agriculture. This in turn negatively affects the economic well-being of the rural sector. From this figure, we can see that Cambodia has done well in reducing intersectoral labor productivity gaps. The non-agriculture to agriculture labor productivity ratio was 4.82:1 during 90s, which reduced to 2.78:1 during 2000. Large productivity differentials in countries other than Cambodia and Malaysia point towards a critical need to improve productivity in agriculture through education and skill formation. The productivity differential was the least for Cambodia and may be attributed to high agricultural growth and implementation of open market reforms since 1989. The demand for rice and rubber has boosted agricultural growth. Simultaneously, expansion of the garment industry has provided job opportunities for the rural laborers migrating from agriculture.
Dr. Batla,
Yes.
is it okay if you show it in slideshow so that everyone can clearly see the graphs? Thank you very much.
Is it visible now?
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay. So now, another aspect of structural transformation is the income share of each sector in the value added. Recall that in the first phase of structural transformation, resources move from agriculture to industry, and in the second stage, the resources move from agriculture and industry to services. You can see Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar still have a high agriculture share in value added, with Laos doing better in recent years. There has been a secular decline in agriculture share of value added in almost all the countries. During 1991 to 2000, substantial growth in the manufacturing sector of Cambodia and Vietnam occurred. This is important for the process of structural transformation, as manufacturing provides employment opportunity for the labor migrating from agriculture. Among the 3 countries, Malaysia has the lowest share of agriculture in value added, along with the highest urbanization and improvements in land and labor productivity. Since the productivity of the industrial sector is much higher than that of agriculture sector, the share of agriculture in economic output starts to decline faster than its share in employment. So this results in an increase in the difference or the structural gap we refer here to as JP gap between the share of agriculture in employment and income. With the rise in industrial productivity, labor migrates from low productivity agriculture to high productivity industrial sector in pursuit of wages. The development of industry is followed by that of tertiary sector, which further intensifies the share of non-agriculture sector in both labor force and output, eventually leading to a sharp decline in the share of agriculture in the labor force and economic output. So we can see from this chart that there's a considerable delay in the reduction of the expected structural gap, which is worrisome as this may lead to inequality with farm incomes falling behind the rest of the economy. For instance, I mean, just to tell that the structural transformation process in India is termed stunted, with the exiting labor moving primarily into the rural, non-farm and informal sector instead of industry and services, and it's becoming increasingly casualized. Importantly, this structural gap widens in the initial stages, but tends to decline when agriculture productivity increases. It means that agriculture transformation is a prerequisite for structural transformation to happen. To find its extent, we decompose labor productivity growth to find the contribution of within sector productivity change and structural change, that is the proportion due to movement of worker across the sector. It again shows distinct results as shown in this figure for 90s and in the next figure for 2000. The contribution of within change to productivity, which was pivotal during the 90s in each country, is rather subdued in the subsequent decade, thereby giving comparative primacies to structural change. The only exception is Myanmar, where within sector holds more prominence in productivity growth. A relatively higher contribution of structural change from 57% to 80% along with productivity growth in Cambodia and Laos can possibly be explained by an increase in migration and trade in non-agricultural products. So the next exercise which we did was the turning points. I won't go into the details of empirics. All I can say is that none of the 8 Southeast Asian countries have attained convergence in sector productivity, but a few, Laos, Thailand, and Indonesia, have already reached their turning points. Cambodia and Malaysia might have reached their TPs by now and are likely to bridge the agriculture and non-agriculture productivity gaps. Vietnam, Myanmar, and Philippines, relatively poorer economies and agriculture dependent, are predicted to take at least a decade to reach their respective turning points. It may suggest the urgency of initiating measures to hasten the process of structural process of labor absorption outside agriculture, along with reduction in the sectoral productivity gaps. As regards the drivers of structural transformation, we have taken dependent variable as gap, and the independent variables include land productivity, terms of trade, that is relative prices, trade, external trade, crop diversification, infrastructure, urbanization, and investment. Since land productive variable is found to be endogenous, we performed a 2SLS instrumental variable method. So you can see from this, coefficients that the significance of land productivity, price structure, and infrastructure is impacting structural transformation. However, rural to urban migration, agriculture diversification, openness to agriculture trade have not been effective in pulling people out of agriculture. The main highlight is that land, labor, or total factor productivity must increase in Southeast Asia to reverse a disproportionate share of labor force in agriculture despite a steady rate of economic growth. So the key findings, I just recapitulate that Southeast Asian nations do not show a sizable growth in land productivity, external trade, and crop diversification, etc. However, the progress on structural transformation is consistent with the theory and historical patterns experienced in several developed and developing countries. The progress is indeed diverse and lags behind developed countries, indicating that labor is not exiting agriculture as fast as agriculture's share of value added has been declining. The structural transformation has decreased from 49% in Thailand to almost 3% each in Cambodia and Malaysia by 2016. The contribution of within change to productivity, which was important during the 90s in each country, is rather subdued during the 2000s, thereby giving comparative primacy to structural change. A relatively higher, between 57 to 80% contribution of structural change in Cambodia and Laos, together with productivity growth, may be explained by increasing migration and trade in non-agriculture products. While Laos, Thailand, and Indonesia have reached their turning points, other nations, especially Vietnam, Myanmar, Philippines, are predicted to take at least a decade towards this goal. Structural transformation is again driven by agriculture productivity, terms of trade and investment. So we can clearly see large intersectoral productivity differentials across Southeast Asian countries other than in Cambodia and Malaysia, which necessitate to accelerate agricultural disproportionate share of the labor force through higher productivity. I think time is less. I would like to say that, I've already highlighted the policy imperatives. All I can say is that, it's very important to have country-specific interventions. Agriculture in Southeast Asia is dominated by smallholder farming with rice as the main crop, except in Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia, where farming is dominated by export-oriented palm oil, rubber, coconut production, respectively. Rapid growth has been taking place in the low-income countries that is propelled by area expansion, technological change, and diversification towards high-value crops. So an increased investment in technology would yield higher returns in low-income nations. On the other hand, in high-income countries such as Malaysia, having specialization in export-oriented commercial crops, the output growth has largely been driven by increase in prices and to some extent area expansion. Price may have little role to play in the long run in these countries due to volatile nature of oil prices. The focus therefore should be on encouraging a diverse crop portfolio and raising productivity through technological advancements and establishing market linkages. Among the Southeast Asian countries, Cambodia and Malaysia are much ahead of other countries in terms of structural transformation and close to achieving convergence in sectoral productivities. Cambodia still has some scope to reduce the share of agriculture in value added through increased growth in manufacturing and services. Investment in education and skill development may contribute significantly to reduce this structural gap. Finally, I would like to say Malaysia has performed very well in improving productivity along with higher growth in manufacturing and service sector and export. Philippines, Myanmar, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand need to take corrective steps to enhance productivity while simultaneously investing in infrastructure and skill development. Myanmar has been caught in a low equilibrium trap of low input, low productivity, low quality output, and low returns. Significant investment in agriculture may be a way out of this trap. Thailand experienced slow growth during 2015 due to political unrest and stagnant global demand, which may have affected her growth process. The country has substantial scope to improve her agriculture sector. Similarly, Philippines is lagging behind, particularly in infrastructure and logistics. So better roads and spread of electricity and communication can help Philippines in attaining higher agriculture growth. Laos, on the other hand, has been experiencing land productivity almost 2.5 times lower than that of Vietnam and Philippines. Moreover, labor productivity is almost half that of Thailand and Philippines. A better infrastructure can make this country more competitive. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Batla. That was a very rich presentation, and I think many participants will be interested to know specific results in their particular countries. All right, so let me invite again, let me request the technical team to pin again Dr. Batla and Dr. Takashima. Of course, Dr. O is already here in front for us to be able to begin our open forum. All right. So we only have 10 minutes for this one. So what we'll do is we'll invite questions first here live in the room. Then afterwards, we will also answer some of the questions that are asked by our virtual participants. All right. So any questions from anyone? Yeah. So just please give him a mic. So you just introduce yourself very quickly, then just mention who, to whom you are asking the question. It can be to everyone. Then and then ask the questions directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, thank you. My name is Ratas from Cambodia. So my question to Dr. Zhou on the corn value chain, because we also have corn and maize value chain. How do you see the different the corn value chain, especially on the cross-border trade before COVID and after COVID? Because I'm seeing very big shift in terms of a commodity export, especially corn, before COVID and after COVID, especially the target export country, how it's totally different before and after? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think this is something we are still a bit puzzled because, because of the COVID situation, we've not been able to actually visit China or Thailand to investigate what was driving their demands. So to answer your question exactly, before COVID, we export mainly to China. But what happened during the COVID was there's a strong reason because of the zero COVID policy by China. And then so they actually seal off our land border trade. And so I think that was one of the reasons that we are not being able to export much to China. Before that, we were also, we have already experienced a lot of challenges in terms of assessing China market because we were not part of the GACC regime. So our government has been trying very hard to get the SPS protocol with the Chinese government. And then we just got the agreement. And then our private sector is still trying to register through the GACC system. So for the last 4 years, even though the China was the main buyer of our corn, their volume of trade has been decreasing for some years. But when the COVID hit the entire region later, I think it was mainly because of the supply chain disruptions. And Thais and we heard the story, but we can't confirm it. They have been importing, the corn from I think the South America market, and then they did not receive it in time. And then also there was a lot of the logistic costs, which find many of these neighboring economies to start importing from Myanmar. So it was very much a accidental, the trade diversion, which the private sector association that I just mentioned was trying to consolidate the trend and make it more sustainable. So I think this is the story of my presentation. Thank you.
Just quick.
So this is a cross commodity trade to neighboring. So it's just follow up because you talk about a lot on the challenging inside the country, because two things happened at the same time. It's sorry for your country as well. COVID is one, and another one is the policy, coup. Yeah. So what would happen to the internal supply of the commodity of the between the rural and the main city? How the disruption of this a food supply chain inside the country?
Well, again, we were very fortunate that maybe one of the, maybe if you can look back when we share the PowerPoints, if you look at the production areas of my country, even with all the conflicts happening, but that area is relatively safe for farmers to grow and expand their cultivation, and then also all the logistic channels connecting these production areas to the main shipping port, and then also the border areas is still safe. So I think this is where the both either, and then also during the COVID, these area, the Shan, we call it Shan State, which is close to China and Thailand, is relatively the smallest infection rate during the COVID-19. So these all factors help our value chain to be sustainable.
So thank you very much, Dr. Zo. I think that conversation can continue because they are both here live in the room. But we give opportunity for the others to ask question, also to Dr. Hiro or Dr. Sima. Any questions from the room? Yes, sir. And will you please share the mic?
Hello, good afternoon. Roel Briones from Philippines. So I have a question for each of the presenters, actually. For Dr. Zhao, he made a statement that association took the role that government should have had in organizing value chain. But I would suggest that actually that should be the normal case. We should not be expecting governments all over Southeast Asia to try to organize or transform value chains, but always private sector in the lead. And then government could play a supporting role following the lead of these private investors as organized by industries. I wonder what you think about that thought. For the two other presenters, I just have points of clarification. For Dr. Takeshima, I was wondering about the use of the term economics of diversification, how it relates to the term economies of scope. Is it moving from one specialization to another specialization, or is it getting less specialized and doing more things? In which case, it's more of the economies of scope. Lastly, for Dr. Sima, I was kind of puzzled by your classification of countries as low income, high income. They don't seem to match any kind of, whether it's agricultural value added or overall GDP per capita. So I was wondering how you classify the countries in Southeast Asia in your study. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Briones. So we'll start with our virtual panel members. So Dr. Hiro, you can probably start to address the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, yes, your hypothesis is correct. So economies of diversification is it's one form of economies of scope. So yeah, it relates close to economies of scope. So instead of specializing in farming or non-farm activities, it's for smallholders for now. As they become more integrated in the food market, it becomes more economical for them to engage in both farming and non-farm activities. So yes, that's the yes. So it relates to economies of scope. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hiro. We can now go to Dr. Sima.
This is the classification is based on data taken from WDI, World Development Indicators, on per capita income from 1991 to 2000 and 2001 to 2016. So we estimated the rate of growth, and based on the per capita income data provided by World Bank, we looked at this classification.
Right, and yeah, Dr. So.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. I think I also tend to agree with your statement by looking at what happened. To me, I think this is a right pathway. But on the other hand, as you can see from Hiroko's paper about the protective policies, and then giving a lot of experiences in our part of the region where the government play a very important role. It was a state-led transformation processes. And I think that this morning, I think our Siaka have already pointed out about the Vietnam experience, that the coffee in Vietnam actually came out of nowhere. And it was very much due to the government-led processes. And then so I think my question is not to go back to the past, but how the government could also try to help the private sector in a much more facilitative but a bit more a strategic support. And so I think this is where I need more, feedback or discussions on these areas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. So I know there are follow-up questions in the responses, but in the interest of time, we really need to close this first session. So let me thank everyone, or all our panelists. I think they deserve again a round of applause and a virtual applause from our virtual participants. The questions from our virtual participants will be shared to our panelists so they can also address them and just provide you directly with the responses. So thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation in this session. I now close this first session and move on to the next session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, for moderating the first session of the ATMI-ASEAN Forum. And now I would like to invite Dr. Trang. Are you here?
Yes, could you hear me?
Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. So Dr. Trang will be the next moderator for session 2. She's has more than 20 years of experience in agriculture and rural development. And she's also joining the IFPRI, Director of the Center for Agricultural Policy. So over to you, Dr. Trang, to moderating the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, IMC. Good day to all of you, and welcome to the session 2 on market integration. On the agenda, we planned to have 40 minutes with 3 presenters, panelists, Dr. Paul Joseph Ramirez, Dr. Ganesh Thapa, and Dr. Divesh Roy. Dr. Paul Joseph Ramirez and Dr. Divesh Roy can join us from the meeting room. Me and Dr. Ganesh joined virtually. So may I invite Dr. Paul Joseph Ramirez and Dr. Divesh Roy to the stage so that we can start the session officially. Thank you very much. Yeah, now we have Dr. Ganesh Thapa with us. Yeah, and 2 panelists on the stage. Great. Thank you very much. So we will start with the presentation of Mr. Paul Joseph Ramirez. You all already know him from the first sessions, but I still would like to share some brief information about Mr. Paul Joseph Ramirez. He is an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and is a SECRA PSU coordinator for the ATMI-ASEAN project. His academic interests and research work in the past decade is mainly on the areas of natural resource and environmental economics, agri-fishery value chains and management, and impact evaluation and monitoring and evaluation. So you really have a broad research interest. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Paul Joseph Ramirez to share with us about the ASEAN Economic Community Study. Please, Mr. Paul.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trang. I'm already here. All right, can I request for the presentation? Do you have? Don't have? All right, that's okay. All right. So do you have? No. Anyway, yeah. So actually, this presentation is just a very simple reiteration or re-echoing of a study that was actually part of the ATMI-ASEAN project. And this particular presentation is to share it with a wider audience. So that's the intention. But the study is still on the initial stage, meaning there are still refinements that are going to be made and to be completed by the end of the project. But the study is basically trying to look into what are the implications on the ASEAN of the AEC or the ASEAN Economic Community on trade and investment and regional food security. So that's the idea. But the study actually touched the surface. It just used the available secondary data to really understand what's happening. And this was a paper actually led by Dr. Jamhari, so we're just sharing it to everyone. Also for comments, suggestions, and recommendations for further improvements. But the idea is that it used two approaches to be able to understand the implications of AEC. It looked into trade openness and the entropy index. So trade openness being the ratio of exports and imports over GDP. So what that study tried to do is just to look into the before AEC situation. So look at time series data, I think from 2012 to 2015. So what's the trade openness of the different ASEAN countries? And then look into what's the trade openness from 2016 to 2020, I think, or 2019. So just a very simple comparison of the trade openness among the different countries. And the result shows mixed results. Okay, so there are countries where the result is higher trade openness, but there are also countries with low values for trade openness. In general, so when you look at the ASEAN altogether, it seems that there's an increase in trade openness, but very little. Okay, so that's why what I'm saying is that the study just touches the surface because it is still in the process of trying to understand what are the key drivers or what are the sources of this improvement in trade openness, and can this be associated with the ASEAN Economic Community? So as we all know, the ASEAN Economic Community envisions a single market and single production base. But we know that currently it's still in the process of doing it. We haven't reached that vision as of the moment. So this study tries to understand the process, what's happening, okay? But still using the available secondary data. So we can share the initial results. It has some data. We don't have the presentation, but in some countries, trade openness is higher. For example, in this study, Cambodia, Lao PDR, Vietnam, among others, have shown increased trade openness, while the other countries showed lower trade openness. It looked into trade openness in terms of the different sectors, the goods sector and the services sector. There's also mixed results. Okay? So it's not definitive as of the moment. So that's why we're not presenting fully the results. But those information that we have, the mixed results, is very useful to really probe deeper into what are the actual implications of AEC to the different countries. Dr. Jamhari also used the entropy index in trying to look into whether countries tend to specialize or tends to diversify. And the initial results showed that many of the ASEAN countries have higher entropy index, meaning they tend to diversify before the AEC and after the AEC, they noted that the countries have higher entropy index value, which means they're diversifying rather than specializing. But again, it needs further details on what particular drivers of this that tells a story about this index. So I think generally that is the story currently of the study. Dr. Jamhari also looked into
the priority commodities produced by countries before AEC and after AEC, and it seems the same. And we understand that because it's not really easy to shift into other products for that particular period without actual structural transformation that's happening in the country. So he checked it for that all the ASEAN countries and showed that the priority commodities or the most produced commodities are actually the same. So again, it requires deeper understanding, deeper analysis on what's the reason for this. Yeah, so the initial results have actually shown mixed result in terms of openness in different countries. Well, the study also showed that the trend in export and import is higher in the after AEC case than before or than the before AEC case. Export specialization does not yet appear, as mentioned, using the entropy index. He also looked into the growth of the FDIs and showed that there is a higher foreign direct investment in the after AEC case than before. There was also some analysis on food security performance using the Global Food Security Index score, and it showed an increase, a higher value in the post-AEC than the pre-AEC. Yeah, so that's generally the initial results of this particular study. For future research, what we actually recommend is to look into deeper what are the key drivers that explains these mixed results among different countries. Currently, we cannot clearly or strongly associate the changes in the trade openness and the changes in the improvements in the FDI, in the entropy index. We cannot clearly associate it yet with the formation of the AEC. And I think it's understandable because it's not very clear as of the moment that we have already reached that vision of a single market and single production base among ASEAN countries. Yeah, so thank you for your time. That's the current status of this particular study, and we will be happy to share with everyone the results of the final study once all of the necessary revisions and improvements in the analysis has been made. So thank you very much, and good day, everyone.
And sorry for meeting. Thank you very much, Paul. We wish to have to see your study published soon. And now I'd like to move to the second presentation of Dr. Ganesh Thapa. Please share your PowerPoint. Dr. Ganesh Thapa is a visiting fellow at the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. He's also a board member of the Asia Pacific Agricultural Policy Forum. He worked for IFPRI from 1998 to 2014 as a lead regional economist for Asia Pacific. Prior to this, he has worked as a program leader for Winrock International in Nepal and a senior economist for the Ministry of Agriculture of Nepal. He has a PhD in agricultural economics from Cornell University in the USA and undertaken research and published books and articles covering different areas of food and agriculture. So please, Dr. Ganesh Thapa, share with us about the policy and institutional constraints in promoting agri-food value chains in the ASEAN and the way forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this policy forum. The presentation is based on the desk study undertaken under the ATMI-ASEAN project. Can you please upload my presentation? Is it possible there? I have difficulty doing from my computer.
I think the technical could have that.
Yes, can the secretariat, the organizers, yeah, okay, thank you. The focus of my presentation will be on the smallholder agri-food value chains and on CLMV, the Cambodia, Laos, PDR, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Philippines countries, which are the focus, the target of the ATMI project. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide. Now, both ASEAN, go back, please. Yes. Both the ASEAN as an organization and ASEAN member countries have undertaken significant efforts and steps in liberalizing the agriculture food market and also market integration through a host of steps, such as the elimination of trade restrictions, focusing mainly on elimination of tariffs, trade facilitation, which includes different aspects like trade and custom regulations, trade documentation, custom clearance, trade enforcement, and trade finance and infrastructure development. Also promoting FDI flows into the agri-food sector and enhancement of competition, ASEAN through ASEAN Strategic Framework Agreements for Logistical Services. And this includes facilitation of goods in transit and interstate transport. At the same time, at the regional level and at the country level, there have been initiatives to promote the role of smallholder farmers in agri-food value chains through policies on agriculture trade, establishing food standards, and also formulating investment regulations. Some examples of these initiatives include collaborative investment in sustainable technology development, harmonization of standards across ASEAN countries, and ASEAN agriculture best practices in crops, in livestock, in fisheries, and other subsectors. Now, as an indicator of success in the area of elimination of tariffs, ASEAN has eliminated almost 99% of all tariffs by 2019. So this has been a very impressive progress. However, non-tariff barriers and non-tariff measures are a major constraint to agriculture trade and development of regional agri-food value chains in ASEAN. And their use has been increasing over time, and they are substituting tariffs to protect domestic economic sectors. For example, ASEAN had in 2019, 5,800 NTBs and NPMs based on official regulations, compared to only 1,600 in 2000. So this poses a major challenge for ASEAN countries. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. Now, in the last 3 decades, most ASEAN countries have made significant gains in increasing agriculture productivity and promoting smallholder agriculture value chains. And this has been made possible through a number of steps taken by these countries. Now, ASEAN member countries have implemented a number of policy reforms to improve efficiency of agriculture markets. And these policy reforms include liberalization of prices for input and outputs, elimination of subsidies, removal of trade restrictions, restructuring of state-owned enterprises, and modernization of finance systems. So these policy changes have contributed to agriculture development. However, despite these steps, significant challenges still remain, especially for CLMV countries and the Philippines. And some of the common constraints in these countries include inadequate infrastructure, mainly with respect to roads, supports border facilities and limited research and technical education, especially targeted to smallholder farmers. Now, these countries also face uncertain land tenure arrangements, which actually discourage smallholders to invest in agriculture technology and new practices. Now, although several laws and regulations have been formulated, their enforcement has been very weak, ineffective. As a result, there are weak links among industry value chains. Now, these countries also face other constraints such as small and fragmented land holdings and persistently low farm gate prices due to fragmented agriculture value chains. Some countries among these CLMV countries have very limited number of farmer organizations. I think Vietnam and the Philippines are exceptions, but other countries also have this limitation. Cooperatives and networks are also lacking in these countries. As a result of this, many agricultural products in CLMV countries are still exported in unprocessed form due to the low capacity of domestic agro industries, which results in significant losses in value added. Next, please. Just to give an example or a few examples of country-specific constraints that these countries face in policy and institutions, Myanmar, let's take as an example, has huge potential for agricultural growth, including high-value commodities, due to its very diverse agroecological zones, abundant fertile soil and water resources, and also scope for application of improved technologies. But it's suffering from low capacity at various levels of government, and then which is hindering the implementation of reforms of investment laws. For example, low capacity of farmer organizations in supporting contract farming through help in designing equitable contracts, negotiating with banks, and dispute resolution. In Cambodia, one of the major problems is the low capacity of domestic agro industry in processing, incurring significant losses of value added. And it also has high operational costs of transportation due to problems with respect to transportation and also in export document processing costs. Now, Lao PDR has again a low number of farmer organizations which can provide help to smallholders in technical areas and also in market services. And it also suffers from insufficient human resources on food safety and limited equipment, tools, and testing kits, which can support export. Now, in the case of Vietnam, one area, Vietnam has made a very significant progress in the last few years, but one of the areas that remain to be addressed is the underdeveloped post-harvest agro-processing industries, despite progress in recent years in moving agricultural products up the ladder of agri-food value chains. Now, Philippines has also a huge potential. It's a powerhouse for the production of different kinds of agriculture commodities, but it suffers from infrastructure gap, which is widespread. Now I move to way forward. Now an issue is the prevalence of non-tariff barriers and non-tariff measures, which has been an important target of the AEC Blueprint 2025. But the problem is these efforts rely on voluntary approach to elimination of these constraints, which has led to very limited success. So one measure that these countries, the ASEAN countries, can take is the effective implementation of ASEAN commitments on NTMs on goods, which were formulated in 2018, but the implementation has not been very effective. And effective implementation will require coordination at regional and national levels, and strengthening of national level trade facilitation committees, regular oversight functions. Now, the second issue is these countries lack adequate policy measures to protect their domestic businesses affected by intense competition due to, as the region opens up and then promotes economic liberalization. Now, some of these countries do not have the policy measures to protect their domestic businesses. So one measure that has been suggested is that these countries need support from ASEAN and more advanced ASEAN member countries because of their low capacity to do this. Now, the next issue is that the ASEAN has promoted a special initiative to help the CLMV countries through a measure called Initiative for ASEAN Integration, which came into operation since 2000, basically to address the development gap within these countries and other more advanced members. But the progress has been very mixed. There has been some progress in human resource development, information and communication, but more needs to be done, especially in 5 strategic areas. The first is food and agriculture. Second is trade facilitation. Third is in promoting the small and medium enterprises, education, and health and well-being. Now, next, please.
Sorry, Dr. Ganesh. I think we are time. We have time constraints.
Okay.
So please wrap up.
So I'll finish in 2 minutes. Now, some of the countries, especially Cambodia and Laos, are liberal in foreign investment policies, whereas other countries like Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam are more restrictive, especially with respect to land use and ownership. And then the suggested measure is that ASEAN should work with all members to liberalize foreign investment in agriculture. Another issue is that the growth in agriculture in these countries in the past came from total factor productivity growth, but this has declined in recent years in Laos, PDR, and Vietnam. And also another area is the intensive use of natural resources leading to environmental problems and climate change. And this also needs to be addressed. The last slide, please. Next. Yes. Now, smallholder farmers are disadvantaged in their access to agri-food value chains, where farmer organizations and cooperatives are weak. So the ASEAN and government should help in organizing and strengthening farmer organizations. Another area that needs attention is food safety and quality, and improving the access of smallholders to credit inputs and information. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Dr. Ganesh Thapa for the great presentation about it's interesting to know that there are positive trend in eliminating tariffs, but we also worry about the increase of the non-tariff barriers. And thanks for your suggestion for the way forward. And now we move to the third presentation, synthesis on the ATMI-ASEAN study on market integration in the ASEAN region by Dr. Divesh Roy. You all know him from the opening sessions, and he joined the CGIAR research program on agriculture for nutrition and health. And in October 2017 as a senior research fellow. And before that, he had been a research fellow with IFPRI as a postdoctoral fellow, and he holds a PhD in economics from the University of Maryland at College Park and master degrees from Delhi School of Economics. Dr. Divesh Roy's areas of expertise include international trade, environment, farm linkages, and food safety, and recently been involved in research related to economics of animal disease outbreaks So please, Dr. David Roy. Thanks. We're a bit of run out of time, so please give up with 10 minutes.